Come and see, Philip says. And in so seeing and so encountering Jesus, Nathanael's life is transformed. Today, we're going to look at this story of Philip and Nathanael, this first act of evangelism in John's Gospel. We're going to retell it and think about Philip's role in the story, about evangelism, but we're going to spend a bit more time looking at Nathanael and ask, where do we see ourselves reflected in Nathanael's journey of faith, of responding to Jesus? Because we are still called to come and see. I love the simple nature of what Philip does in this story. Mostly, obviously, every story is about Jesus, but much of the narrative here happens with Philip and Nathanael. Philip discovers this great thing. Jesus calls him, and he goes, "Oh, brilliant." And he goes off to his mate Nathanael. He's got this good thing that he wants to share. He doesn't go and give Nathanael a lecture, doesn't invite him on, take him on an alpha course, he doesn't give him a 10-point plan, outline the nature of his sinfulness and how he can move. He doesn't do any of that. He goes to his friend who he loves, once he knows who he is, like, "Oh, I know who Jesus is. Come and see." It's brilliant. He didn't try to convince him or argue with him. I love that. How often do we invite people to come and see? Before we do the church stuff, how often do we invite people to come and see anything, something else? When's the last time you invited someone to come and see something? Anything. What have you invited people to come and see? John?
I invited my daughter and sister to come and see some coffee at a restaurant in Putsey.
To come and see the food, the drink.
The cafe. Yeah.
Come and see this place. I like it. I bet you'll like it. Come with me. Yeah. Anything else? What else have we invited people to come and see? Are you going to say the thing that I've already written down on my list? I bet you are. Go on. The shows, right? People I love are in a thing. It's brilliant. I think you will love it too. Come and see. Especially when someone we know from church is in a show. Yeah, it's great. Come and see this thing. It's lovely. Amelia invited her grandma, my mum, to see Wonka. Amelia liked it. Oh, Nanny will like this. We'll take Toodles. We asked her. She came. It's really good. We invite people to Netflix. We invite people to see things on the telly with us. We invite people to dinner. That's quite easy. And it works. I don't know how often you invite people to come and see things at church or come and see Jesus. That is harder, right? That is harder. The beer festival, that was a nice, easy one. It was easier to invite people to a beer festival. And it worked. Yeah, it was a good thing. And we'll talk about that sort of thing. But yeah, by and large, it's a bit more sort of... You're a bit more worried when you invite people to come and see this. And I think I worked out why halfway through the first time I gave this sermon. I think you might feel as nervous inviting people. If you had written Oliver or directed Oliver, when you invite people to come, you're worried. What if they don't like it because you're wrapped up in it? You've got chips in the game, dog in the fight, that sort of thing. When you invite people to church, and this is your church, what if they don't like it? Do they not like you? What if you invite them to see Jesus and like, well, I think Jesus is real and I love him, and you don't? You think I'm mad and weird? It's a higher stakes thing. So that's why, I think. That makes sense. So if it feels hard to you, go easy on yourselves. It makes sense. It is a bigger thing. But it does work. It does work. I do it for my job, and I get away with it. It is easier for me, but also kind of harder. People have already filtered me out. But I did it recently. I remember we were doing the start of the start course. I stood at the front here and I said, right, you must all invite your friends. It never works when I stand at the front of church and say, why don't you come on the start course? Never works. We started the start course and somebody turned up and said, you said to come on the course. Can I come in? I'd like to know more about this Jesus business. And we were amazed and it was delightful, and she came in. It was great. Sometimes it works. You just ask, come and see. And they do. Recently, this week, I invited someone to church for Monday communion. We meet up here. If you don't work, if you're around on Mondays, come and see. Midday on Mondays. We sit up in the chancel. There's a lot of quiet. We don't have coffee. There's no singing. We're just quietly with each other. We pray. We have communion. We meet Jesus. It's lovely. And that's what this person needed. And I said, why don't you come this week? And they did. I just knew, and I knew that's where I meet Jesus some of the time. I said, come see, and they did. I didn't give either of these people that full-bore gospel lecture or doctrine. Come and see. Evangelism is scary. It really is. I get that. But maybe it's not as big and scary when you break it down. We are going to have to keep talking from time to time and throughout this year, I think, about evangelism and how we do it. And you are better at doing some of this for your friends than I am. But it isn't as hard as you think. Come and see. It might occasionally be your job to explain a little bit about the gospel, like it is mine. But mostly, it's simple. As long as you can say, yeah, I really do believe that, and my church is great, then you can do it. If you don't think either of those things, come and have a word with me. If this church is not one good enough that you would invite your friends to, help me make it better. But there's a thing on soon. There's lots of things on soon. It's going to be Burns Night. We're doing a thing. There's going to be a pie and peas supper. There's going to be Easter and giant celebrations. We're going to do a course after Easter on mental health. We're going to do a follow-on to the START course before Easter. There's lots of stuff coming on. And you should be able to say, if you can trust us, I hope you can, there's a thing. I'm going. It's going to be good. Why don't you come? That's that. That's Philip. I think Philip gives us this doable model of evangelism. Make it a bit less scary. Have a go. Let's turn to Nathaniel. What of him? I love the journey we get of Nathaniel through this little story and cheekily through the whole gospel we're going to look at. The first meeting, you'd have to say Nathaniel is, skepticism would be, whoops, I'm going to need those. Skepticism would be the best description we could give of Nathaniel, right? Shall I pause while I do this? Those ones are done, it's all right. Yeah. Nathaniel is at first skeptical. You might say cynical. He's like, come and see someone from Nazareth. And we can imagine Nazareth was up north. It's like saying someone from Barnsley. Or you can, I'm aware that if I say either Bradford or Leeds next, half of you will go the one way. But there's always like, northerner, why would I come and see that? Does Jesus mind? No, he does not. There's this wonderful thing in John's gospel. Nathaniel's like this, straight up, flat out, I don't believe that. Jesus is fine. Later on in the gospel, we get Thomas. He's called Doubting Thomas. I call him perfectly reasonably skeptical, good question asking Thomas. Jesus came back from the dead. No, not going to believe that till I've seen it. Thank you very much. Does Jesus tell him off? No. He meets him and says, see. So Nathaniel's there going, I'm not sure, that's daft, what could ever come out of Nazareth? And then he meets Jesus. I do need that page, it turns out. Sorry. I thought it'd be all clever and print things off in the right sort of size for my little book. He comes and he sees, and Jesus says, here is a proper Israelite. Here's a plain-speaking northerner like me. Here's someone who will tell it how it is. Isn't that refreshing? That you haven't got to dress it up, wrap it up, posh it up, or pretend to come to church or to be with Jesus. Jesus loves that. He says, I see you. Here's an Israelite. And that Israelite thing is a reference to Jacob from earlier in the Bible. Jacob had this dream and seen God, and when he woke up looking back and having seen these angels ascending and descending that Jesus mentions here as well, he says, God was here. And he renames him. He becomes Israel. Here is an Israelite. Here is someone who will know they have seen God and talk about it honestly and be prepared to wrestle with it. It's brilliant. Jesus is happy with our honest doubts and our curiosity. You should not be worried about your friends' honesty and skepticism and curiosity. It's all okay, and keep some of it yourself. So Nathaniel does go and see. He has this curiosity. He trusts his friend enough to explore. Most people do. Here's a question. I wonder if wherever you are on this Nathaniel journey, that's the question for us. Are you like skeptical Nathaniel? I'm not sure I want to go. Are you, all right, I'll go and have a look. Are you curious Nathaniel? And we'll see. Nathaniel who encounters Jesus, and then afterwards what happens. Wherever you are, if you've already encountered Jesus, can you remain curious about Jesus? Can you be the sort of person who keeps going, I wonder what's going on with that. Oh, I want to get closer. I want to revisit that. Hopefully you haven't got it pinned down and start taking it for granted. And you will some of the time. But let's try and remain curious. I do. I love this curiosity. That's what drives Nathaniel to encounter Jesus. And that is what changes his worldview. Philip doesn't argue him into it. He doesn't get badgered. He meets Jesus and goes, oh, wow. And that's amazing. And I'm a bit jealous. Wouldn't it be nice for Jesus to walk in and you actually just meet him and go, oh, it's all well and good, all this stuff. Oh, all right, sold, convinced, I'm in the presence of God. Wouldn't that be a nice way to have your faith spring to life? I don't know, it might be a bit overwhelming. What I wonder about is how much choice Nathanael had in that moment. You meet Jesus, you're in the presence of God. Are you just overwhelmed and you don't have a choice anymore? Calvinists would say that. There's this branch of Christianity that says that there's the elect. God chose these people for before time. These people will meet God and believe, and those people won't. I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that at all. But there's maybe an element of being unable to resist. I don't have good theology on this for you, but what I remember is the last time I became a Christian, and there's been more than one time I did, but the last time it really stuck. And I had this sense just before that encounter, that mountaintop moment that I sometimes speak about, that I had a choice to step into that I knew it was kind of there. And once I stepped into it, it was like, oh, wow, this is real. And I haven't really been able to look back since. But there was both this element of divine encounter and being compelled to make a choice and yet choosing to go into that. There's a whole other series of sermons. I just wanted to pull it out because I saw it in the text. The next event in John's Gospel, do you know what comes next after this? We have a series there's like 7 big miracles in John's Gospel, and the next one after this little story is the first one. Do you know what the first big miracle in John's Gospel is? What's that? The wedding feast at Cana. Well done. Good job. It's the water into wine, one of my favourite ones. It's a great story. I think if you asked Nathanael what the first miracle was, the first big thing that happened, it was the moment he met Jesus. It's all well and good to look at those grand things, and they are important. But that meeting of Jesus, that being curious and ready to encounter him, however skeptical we are, that's the important bit, day in, day out. But then Jesus says to him, careful, you think that's amazing? You think this is amazing, meeting me? You ain't seen nothing yet, I can imagine him saying in his plain-speaking northernness. That's just the beginning for Nathanael. There's the rest of following Jesus, the discipleship, the walking along with him, the going on the adventures, more revelation, more adventure, more work alongside him, more knowing him. But we know very little about him. Nathanael appears in John chapter 1. He next appears in John chapter 21 after the resurrection. He disappears for 19 chapters. No Nathanael. We don't know who he is. He might be the same guy that's called Bartholomew in the other Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Turns out Bartholomew is basically a surname. Is that the same person? Don't know. Nothing happens. He must still be around, though, because we do meet him at the end. He's there after the resurrection. So presumably there's a long period in which it's just kind of ticking along. I'm calling this phase of Nathanael's journey like the day-to-day discipleship stuff. How easy was that? Had he started taking Jesus for granted, even though he was just there? I bet you could. I mean, it's amazing what you can get used to. Did he have to keep reminding himself of the big encounter? Or did he keep having encounters? Discipleship, Nathanael. I have charismatic friends who seem to live in that moment of encounter, like all the time. Used to do my head in. And we go to church and they would be, oh, the Lord is here today. And they meant it. And they felt like they were in the presence of God and their hands were in the air and their hearts were on fire. And they were just astonished by being in the presence of God several times a week. I know people of different persuasions who, if they have encounters with God, possibly wrote it in their journal and treasure it closely, and you would never have seen it written on their face. I don't think both of those things are fine, and I had to work out that that's okay that it's not me. I have had one or two moments, mountaintop moments, where I was like, oh, wow, this is undeniable. This is God. There's no escaping it. And then the rest of the time, it's not, and it's not fair, and I wish I had more. And it took a long time to let go of that and accept that I can't live on the mountaintop. I don't know what Nathanael was like, but he sticks with it. There is some kind of day-to-day discipleship thing for Nathanael. I have had to work out where I can find my smaller encounters with God. If there's such a thing as a small encounter with God, does that mean anything? Like the more reliable, just enough encounters, I'm not sure I'd get anything done if I kept having all of that stuff going on. Jacob's exclamation, in the start of the Bible, that bit, oh, God was here, was looking back, was retrospective. It was just after the dream. I think what we all need is to know, looking back, where was God? Where did we meet God? Maybe looking back, where were those mountaintop moments? Where were the big bits that you can cling to? That was real. I did know it. But also looking back over the days and weeks, where did I meet Jesus this week? Where was my faith just emboldened and enlivened and refreshed enough? I think, I don't like to make this about me, it should be about Jesus, but one of my missions here in this church, one of my particular things I'm called to do, is to help us explore the riches of our Christian faith. The older I get, the longer I've been a Christian, the more I've been open to finding God in the things that other Christians have done that at some points I've thought weird or even wrong. And I now know that I can meet God in the candles and the incense and the quiet and even the putting on of the robes and all of those things that I used to think were awful. I love it when I meet God there. But also when we have live music. Steve's going to play next week. There'll be a guitarist and a singer, and we will have live modern contemporary worship music, and I will drum and I will meet Jesus in that, and it is glorious. I meet Jesus in giving people communion, and I meet Jesus when somebody else does it, and I get to receive communion, and it's tender, and that has surprised me. I meet Jesus in prayer ministry, either asking for it or doing it with other people, or wrestling in a small group, or serving people coffee. I have worked out and spotted more and more places. How many streams, I ask you, can you add to your landscape of faith? 2 conclusions. I am done. 2 conclusions. Be more Philip. Come and see. It's a good method of evangelism. That's all you're asked to do. Jesus will do the rest. It's not your job to convert people. Just come and see. And I note that in my life, the person who most needs evangelizing consistently is me. You know, you want to keep hearing the good news. This is real. Jesus does love you. It does make a difference. And when there's a new thing going on, a new flavor, a new stream of spirituality, something you haven't tried, you think is a bit weird and a bit from the other service or a bit from this, come and see. Come and see. And maybe notice which Nathaniel you are. Are you skeptical? No northerner, right? Or curious? Or encountering? Or, well, I've had my encounter and I'm jobbing and moving along, discipleship still there at the resurrection. Nathaniel. Which Nathaniel are you? I've been at least 3 of those this morning. You don't have to be just one. It's a journey, but maybe notice and remember that Jesus loved every one of those. It is fine. Wherever we are on that Nathaniel journey, let us keep seeking Jesus in doubt or curiosity or delight or faithful worship and service. Come and see. Come and see.